Welcome to Hey Thanks. We're your hosts,
Ivy Miller.
and Lauren Hawkins.
Hey, thanks, Lo.
Hey, thanks, Ivy.
I'm really excited about this week's topic.
Yeah, what are we talking about?
The most attractive quality, in my opinion, that someone can have.
What is that quality?
Grit.
I literally have a tattoo of that on my arm.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do.
I didn't even know.
Yeah, I do.
Well, then I think that you would be the best person to do it. Can you please give me the definition for grit?
I would love to. So grit in psychology is a very positive trait, non-cognitive, and it's based on an individual's perseverance of effort combined with passion for like a very particular long-term goal. And this like perseverance, it's like very much about perseverance of effort, like promotes the overcoming of obstacles or challenges that lie in your path, basically. And it's like the most driving force and biggest indicator of people's success, like beyond IQ, beyond like test scores, beyond like anything that's sort of our obvious indicators of success. Like grit is actually the thing that can be a great predictor of if people are going to be successful. And I think the other cool thing about grit that I love so much is it's like it's something you can learn. Like you can learn how to be grittier. And it's like this idea that failure is not permanent. And like the points of failure can actually be our biggest points of growth, which it's a perspective, but it's a perspective that I've been able to sort of shift in myself. And it's made the biggest difference in my life so far. So yeah, that's grit. That's why I'm so obsessed with it. I think it's the coolest thing in the world.
I agree. That was really well said.
Thank you. Have you had any experience with like gritty experiences or like hitting rock bottom or anything like that where you've had these points of like, gotta get myself up by my bootstraps here and keep on going?
Well, I think that I have had no other option growing up because I have had a lot of different hobbies.
Mm-hmm.
And the jack of all trades, master of none is real.
Yeah.
But also, that's not the complete phrase.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yep.
What is the entire phrase?
It's a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one.
Oh, that is so interesting.
Yeah. So all those people out there that are like, I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. It's a good thing. It's a great thing. But having said that, I was surrounded by a lot of people that were really, really, really good at one thing. And I have always had like, I've been pretty good at a lot of things, but never really great at one thing. And my success that I've seen in my life has been through perseverance and continuing to do stuff. Because if you keep going, eventually something good's going to happen.
Right. Absolutely.
So for me, I've had two like major rock bottoms in my life.
Okay.
And career-wise, I've had like, when I graduated college, I was so excited because I've been putting so much effort into my career and working full time and all this. And I had a series with Red Bull called Ivy Being Ivy. Mm-hmm. And we were about to sign a second season. They had given me the contract. And then when I also had gotten signed to an agency called WME, which I was like, that was a big thing for me since I was little. Like it was on my vision board since I was like 8. And I was signed to them. Yeah. And then when COVID happened, Red Bull took away the contract. Yeah. And that agency dropped me. And I was like, what? Everything it felt like in my life I had worked for up until that point had just been ripped up from under me.
I mean, you had it on your vision board since you were a little girl.
Yeah.
Like,
it was
how
like,
can you,
what other option was there? So that was like a whole year of like anxiety, like holding my knees, blah, 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 just bad. And then, you know, out of the blue, a network called me that I had really, really looked up to and was like, do you want to be on this TV show? And I was like, oh my God, what? Yes. Yeah. Sounds good. And another favorite quote of mine would be, the universe or God has 3 answers. Yes, not yet, and I have something better. And I was repeating that to myself the whole time that I was like, so like, just so bummed
yes,
from yes.
Not yet, and I have something better.
Yes.
I love that.
And so when I got that call, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so sick. This is everything I've wanted. And so I spent a year filming that, 12-hour days. It was part of the writing process and filming process. And it was just such a cool learning experience. And in that year, you know, I was surfing, getting paid monthly to surf, and also had just bought some land in Costa Rica.
Yeah, awesome.
And
seems like the dream.
Yeah, I felt really good.
Things turned around.
And then 1 week in September, right before the TV show came out, the network called and goes, actually, we've canceled it.
No explanation.
No explanation. And then
that's like a ex breaking up with you for no reason, and you never know.
Never saw it coming. Nothing.
God.
Like, oh, that was a lot of work for. Okay, bye. And then the
full ghost.
Yeah, the land I bought, someone had bought it up from under me, and they gave me my money back, and just were like, sorry, moving right along. And then also my surf sponsors, one had gotten sold and the other one was taking a different direction in the same week. And I was just like, damn.
When it rains, it pours.
Yeah. But like,
Shit.
in a weird way, it got me so excited because last time this happened, the yes, not yet, and I have something better was so real. And it just took that time to like be still and soak in this time of transition. Like I was being pivoted in a different direction. I have no idea where yet. I'm still in that area, but my trust muscle is a lot stronger. And I'm honestly excited. Like instead of being really bummed, I'm just stoked for what's coming.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. I mean, you know, like, is there anything, like any sort of advice you can give to people? Because like we all have points in our life of hitting rock bottom. Like it's inevitable. It's going to happen like at some point. You know, I guess maybe there's some people out there that never hit rock bottom. I think that's few and far between.
That's boring.
That's fucking bullshit, right? Yeah, like that's boring. You don't get any grip from that.
Yeah.
So, you know, is there anything that like you did that got you through? Was there anything like, you know, any sort of advice that you can give to people, right?
Well, I think like when people say, you know, don't let it affect you, move on. Like, no, let it affect you. I had 3 weeks straight where like I felt like my whole body was bruised. Like emotional pain is so real.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't walk. I was exhausted. I was just like, it really affected me. And I like let it affect me because the year before or 2 years before I hadn't. And I like tried to tell myself everything was fine. It took twice as long to get through it.
Yeah.
So I think
you were trying to put on a face for everybody and be like, it's fine. I'm great. Like,
and she certainly was not great.
The opposite.
And I think like letting myself affect it, like it was 3 weeks versus a year of healing, you know, like I got through it in 3 weeks and then was excited for what was coming.
You almost like you let yourself have that mourning period, right? Which I think is so important with anything that happens, whether it's like a mourning of career, a mourning of a relationship, like you got to let yourself have that grieving period to be like, this fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Like I am not okay. And this is not how I anticipated this going. I think that's huge. But also the second time around, you had this like, okay, I know where we are. Like we've been here before and we're okay. Like we got to this place again. Like, all right, let's just keep going. Right.
And what I did was I looked back at my journals when I had hit the last rock bottom.
Yeah.
And I just started like kind of, instead of taking a year to heal, I just was reading my points of what I did in that scenario. And so it's like, okay, I did that before. I can do this
like
again.
Your reference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just knowing that when something like that happens, it's God or the universe's way to like sneakily tell you there really genuinely is something better coming. And, you know, I'm right there at the spot where I'm still like something better is coming, but I'm in no rush. Like, I'm really genuinely excited about whatever it is next on my plate is going to be fantastic. And I'm really stoked for it. And when my friends call me, I've had a few friends call me when they like lose all their sponsors, when they're like way, way better surfers than I am, like on tour, doing stuff like that. And they're like distraught. And I'm like, I know this is the worst possible news that you can get right now, but I'm weirdly excited for you because that means there's something fantastic coming for you. And sure enough, without fail, there's always a greater opportunity that required that to happen in order to get to that next level.
Right.
So that's my advice. Have you had an experience where you
I've had a lot of experiences like that. And I think, there are points where you have a decision, right? Like you have the decision to wallow in your sorrow, never get out of that grieving place, and walk away, right? Like there's always that option. That's the easy way out, right? I think one that was actually really early on in my life was I was a dancer. We've talked about that, a ballet dancer. And I was auditioning for San Francisco Ballet for the school. I'd been in their summer program. They do these summer programs and you go for 6 weeks and you train and they watch you. And then at the end you say, I want to be at the full-time school. And it's like boarding school for ballet, right? So I told them I wanted to be there. And I remember that it's the very last week and I got taken into the director's office. And she sat me down and she looked at me and she goes, "You are never going to be a ballet dancer. Ever." And she's like, "Your feet are not good enough. They will never be good enough." And if you know ballet, it's all about like great feet and turnout. And there's like physical elements that ballerinas have to have. And in my head, I'm like, well, fuck. That's that.
That puts a wrench in our plans.
That puts a wrench in our plans. This is derailing.
If what you're saying is true,
then better reassess here. Better get another game plan going. So I remember walking out of there. And, I obviously was crying and I was really upset. And my mom came over and comforted me. And she was like, "You have two options." She's like, "One, we can walk away." She goes, "That's fine. I'll support you. We can walk away. You never have to take a ballet class or do ballet again." She goes, I don't think that's what you want to do, but if you want to, that's fine." She said, "Then your second option is to prove her wrong." And I was like, "But Mom, it's my feet. I can't change my feet." She goes, "Honey, it's not about your feet." And I was like, what the fuck does she mean? Like, okay, Mom, like whatever. And she's like, "What do you want to do?" She's like, "You don't have to answer that, but just, keep putting one foot in front of the other. And then when you make a decision, you let me know." So I went back home and, started taking ballet classes at my studio. And I started like getting this kind of like burning heat inside of me. I was like, fuck, like it'd be kind of cool to show her she's wrong. Like that's kind of the ultimate win, right? And I used it as this motivating factor, right? Like I actually used that as the fucking fire beneath me. And I worked my ass off. I worked harder than I've ever worked like in that next year. And the next summer, I went to the audition because you had to audition for the summer program too. And I auditioned for the summer program and I remember looking at her and I was like, there she is. I was like, there she is. And then you got a letter in the mail, right? And I remember, you wait for weeks and weeks and I saw the letter and you kind of knew if it was like the thick or thin envelope. I saw the envelope and I was like, I don't know, man. Like it looks pretty good, but like we're not totally sure. And I opened it up and I got in. And I was like, well, fuck. But I only got into the school for the summer. So I went back. I had these 6 weeks and I'm like, I'm gonna fucking prove her wrong.
Oh, okay. So this
it was
like,
only the first step. I still had to it was like part 1 and part 2.
Got it.
And then I worked my ass off. I told them again, I was like, I want to be here full time. And she took me into her office the end of that summer and I got in.
Wow.
And
what did she say?
She was like, "I don't know what you did this year, but I'm impressed and I'd love for you to join us this next year."
Did you tell her you got a foot job and just stuff it?
I was like, bitch, you don't know about foot jobs. No, I actually, you know what I did? It was crazy. Like I had this like device, it looked like it was from the fucking 1920s. It was like this piece of wood and it was like shaped like your foot. You put your foot in it at night and it would stretch your foot. It was like a human stretcher for your foot. It was wild. Yeah, I put my foot in that thing for a year and worked my ass off. Yeah.
A medieval foot stretcher.
It was a medieval foot stretcher. Yeah, wow. It was wild. You got to look them up all night.
That's amazing, Lo. Yeah, congrats. That's thanks. So cool. And not even, I mean, the ballet's cool and all, but to like.
Yeah, it's more about like.
Going back and and really just like, doing it your own way. If someone
tells you no, like, and this could be in, career, in life, and, use it as motivation if you can. Like, yeah, it's disappointment, but like if you can reframe like the negative and try to reframe the negative, again, like I say, take your grieving process like seriously. That's, I think, really in an important thing. It's integral to like your sanity and just how you process information and letdown and failure. So I think the grieving process is important. But if you can get past that, like you did the second time after those 3 weeks and say, okay, what's my like, how do I get through this? How do I like actually make the best out of this? And then like for you and I, like I've actually used that a lot in my life, in my career, and used those like points of just complete failure and disappointment as like learning. Those are the biggest points of learning.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a journey since then, but I think like if you can sort of reframe these biggest points of criticism into points of learning and just reframe. I agree.
The point of like the option to give up is really interesting because I've also been there where I'm like, okay, I could give up now. And then I'm like, what does that look like to me? Is that applying to like a 9-to-5 job? Because I lifeguarded. That was my 9-to-5 job. I also had a few others, but like once I started taking comedy more seriously and like surfing, and I don't even know what to call my career, but once I just started doing everything I loved, I was like, there's no other job for me it would feel inauthentic. And so like there's no other way to live my life than to keep going in my authenticity.
Right.
And I realize that's a huge privilege that I get to do what I love for a living.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can give up. Sure.
Well, and I think that, the other part of grit that I think is so cool is like, it's not about like next week or, 2 months from now. It's like, it's literally about like the driving forces behind these long-term goals. Like, and you don't have to know what they are, but it's like, it's building these little traits, being able to wake up every day and just show up for yourself. Number one. Then from there, okay, like what am I, and I have a really hard time with this because I get with my like ADD and my sort of scatteredness, I get so like, I'm doing 10 different things at once. And it's like, all you have to do is focus on, if you can get one thing done every day, it's like the whole idea of like, oh my God, it's the story of the boy who had to learn like, 500 words for his spelling test. And he's like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And it's like one a day, every day. And you will get there. Yeah. Like it doesn't have to be this big grandiose plan that you're executing every day. It literally just has to be one little thing.
Yeah, one step in the right direction.
Yeah, and being able to commit to that is like the most important thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said you can give up, but I also wanted to be like, come on. Are you going to give up?
You're like, that's crazy. We're not doing that.
Give up.
You can't give up.
Yeah, one step in the right direction. It's all you need. Because some days, I mean, there's like a week out of the month where I have crippling anxiety, like holding my head between my legs, just dying, rocking back and forth.
What do you do for that, by the way? Do you have anything that you can like?
I do all the things. I do the yoga, I do my meditations, and I love them, but it doesn't subside. It walks kind of help. But I mean, thinking about one, like not just thinking of something to be grateful for, but really feeling how grateful you are for that thing, and then going to the next thing and feeling the feeling of it, and doing the next thing and feeling the gratefulness, and then stop and just feel the buzzy of the gratefulness, that can like break me out of it sometimes.
I think for me, like if I'm having a day like that where I'm like, oh my God, what the fuck? Like the world is crumbling down.
Yeah.
Someone told me once, they were like, if you just think of it's literally one single thing you're grateful for and write it down.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that. I'm like every morning I literally have a list, and it's every day, and it can be like similar things. You don't have to be like super creative, but just what comes to mind, like one thing, that one word, that's it. That's an easy commitment.
Yeah.
And then go from there. It's building blocks.
Yeah. And the smaller, more minute thing it is, I feel like the more your body has to feel for that feeling, like, just I'm stoked that my blood is pumping through my body and it's working.
Yeah.
Like it's going.
Totally.
And I think on those days where you're feeling that anxiety, and like, that's a week out of my month.
Right.
That's a lot.
That's a big chunk of time.
Yeah. And you got to capitalize on my time. I got to capitalize on my time.
Yeah, that's true.
But so if I saw one quote that was like, if you're tired, do it tired.
I love that. That's me half the time.
Yeah. And finding that one step in that right direction that can put, like, even if it's something as like small as getting myself out of bed and going on a walk and thinking about just something creative. If that's it for the day, great.
Win.
Yeah. Because I'm
total win.
You're honoring yourself. You're not trying to shove yourself out of your anxiety hole.
No.
You can't do that. You got to like treat yourself like a little person and be like, hey, are you okay in there?
Yeah. And honestly, going off of that, like I'm so quick to be critical of myself and so quick to overlook the wins, even like no matter how big or small they are. And I'm like really working on this year, trying to be more like self-appreciative of like, you know what? Like, yeah, I'm fucking tired today, but like I got up and I took a walk outside.
Yeah.
Win. Like you're saying, it's like on those days where you're like, I can't possibly do anything, and you do one thing, call it a win.
Yeah.
And appreciate yourself for it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Another thing that really helps, and it's kind of goofy, but I go on my voice memos app on my phone.
Love that.
And I have one for affirmations for myself. I have a pep talk one for myself.
Is this like Michael Scott reading the
Foley?
Yeah, love this.
Foley.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, hey, sad girl. I know you're sad. And then I'll like name all the things I like about myself. And I like recorded it way earlier on. So I'm listening to it and it's like I hear it for the first time every time. And something about
God, she's good.
Yeah. Something about hearing your own voice say those things makes you believe it more.
Yeah, you're like, oh my God, she's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. Do you have one for like certain moods you're in?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I have one that just says dying. That's like my really bad one. I'll hit that one if like I'm like barely.
It's like that's like D-Day.
Yeah, and I'm like, hey, creepy girl.
You're feeling like a monster.
Yeah.
Wow, I think I'm gonna use that technique. I love that.
It helps me because I need to like reading stuff doesn't really work. Meditating, I'll find something wrong with it. Doing a yoga class, if it's not the flow I want, I'm pissed.
Yeah. 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 I mean, you journal a lot too. I mean, I think that's a good technique.
Yeah.
I just recently took up journaling.
Really?
Yeah. And I go through like, because all my like really good friends like have a journal, like Charlotte has a journal, you have a journal, like Julia has a journal, like a lot of my friends have journals, and Shelby journals, but she's like also an artist, so hers is like more expression in that way, which I think is great if you're like an artist and you can express yourself in that way, like whatever your outlet is. But I like didn't really have, so I was like, okay, let's try journaling, and like, but then I would be like, if I'm not journaling every day, like I'm failing.
You can't do
and
that.
No, so like so I had to like learn how to let go with that. Like that's my intensity and my like how I hold myself to these really high standards. And I'm like, girl, if you want to journal,
Yeah.
like if you don't. If you want to go punch a boxing bag, great.
Yeah,
like
it's just
go do that.
A form of expression for yourself, like a little you time.
Yeah, like whatever that is, like working out is great. That's a great win for the day.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're like, I did 5 push-ups.
Yeah.
Like,
I just walked around the gym.
Yeah. I just scouted
yeah.
the meat show here.
Yeah.
That's great.
I was wondering about this. I do these hypnosis meditations.
Yeah.
And you like dive into different blocks that you have. So there's one for like
your mental blocks.
Yeah.
Cool.
And you can like address them because I don't have a great therapist, but I think therapy is insane. Like I don't have a therapist because I haven't had like that relationship yet, but like I can see how it would be amazing. But like I also am able to address my own issues fairly quickly. So I feel like I feel like I would want the relationship with my therapist to be extremely deep already, but I know that you have to build that. Right. So I do these like hypnosis therapy things, and it's like an online course. And so you dive into your different problems that you're having. And one I was doing is unblock shadow. And for those of you that want to check it out, it's with Lacey Phillips and it's To Be Magnetic. It's amazing. I've been doing it for like 7 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
There's one in
plug her at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. There's one in Unblock Shadow where you have to write down all the things you don't like about yourself and like all the scariest things that you would think that someone could possibly say about you. That's your shadow, is like
so like worst possible scenario.
Yeah, the parts you hate about yourself that you're afraid to come out. Oof. Which aren't that scary. They're scary in your head. Mm-hmm. So you write them down, you see them, and then there's this one part towards the end of that class.
Right.
Online class where you have to reach out to 5 of your friends, closest people in your life, and ask if they see any self-destructive tendencies in you or what you can improve on.
Wow, I love that. And
it's gnarly. And I always described that as grit, as something that like I don't know, taking constructive criticism smoothly. Because those are all like, oof. I have been really trying to work on taking constructive criticism better.
It's hard.
It is so hard.
It's so hard. Because you immediately like internalize and personalize it so much.
Yeah.
And like the constructive part of the criticism is like the stance you take on it, right? Like criticism is criticism. But like if you make it constructive, it's your perspective, right? So it's like if you can have the perspective, right? Like with the failures, like we were talking about earlier, the same thing with the it's all kind of in the same boat there, but like it's the perspective, right? Like I love that with like worst case scenario. Like what are the things you're most afraid of? Okay. Then that's the same thing. That's going to be the biggest criticism you're afraid of. Yeah. So like reframe it. It's not that scary. Mm-hmm. It's like the monster in the closet or under the bed. Like you're like, okay, like
you got to make friends with it.
You got to be friends.
Yeah.
You got to be homies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's really just a sad little version of you.
Yeah.
That's like, please don't be so scared of me. And you're like, oh!
And you're like, oh my God. I mean, I did that. It's so funny you said that with the unblocking the shadows. My therapist, who I absolutely love, like
I think that should be a soundbite because you say that every time.
Yeah, I do. I really like it took me 10 years and I finally found one. It's like the one.
Yeah, you need that.
Yeah. And she had me do this exercise about dating, same thing where it was like, what are my biggest fears of dating? Mm-hmm. And it was so freeing. I was like, this isn't that crazy. Mm-hmm. Like this isn't that scary. It's the same thing you're talking about. And she's like, okay. Good. Like now we can move on.
Yeah, now I can go on.
Now I can move on.
But that's why I journaled.
Yeah.
I've journaled since I was like 6. I've had a journal and like I don't know. I just feel like I can say no matter what, how crazy or sad or bad or funny or not funny or happy or sad or whatever it is. I can write it down and like once I write it down, it's like, oh.
Yeah.
That took a lot of power out of that statement.
Yeah. What would you say to people who like haven't developed these tools yet? Like how is like because this can be really overwhelming and like scary for people who haven't done this or haven't like explored into this. Like me with the journaling, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't know how to do this. It's almost like there's an intimidation factor. So like how do you start this? Like how do you reframe journaling or like what your like outlet is when you receive criticism, like how to reframe you know, your intake process and how to process this and then, you know, create like a positive behavior after?
That is a beautiful question.
Oh.
Well, for journaling, I think that a lot of people think that you're writing about your day, like dear diary, I had a great day today. And no, like if you look at my journals,
The sky was blue.
They're literally like my word vomit, and I can tell what I was going through based on my thoughts. Like it's not, I'm not writing it for anyone. Sometimes I write to myself, but like it's not. I rarely recap a day.
Yeah. Okay.
I mainly am just like, here's how I feel. It's a lot of feeling. And then
that's good because I think like that was even a scary thing for me. I'm like, well, what do I write? Like, you know, it almost is like that to yourself.
Yeah. And I've had a lot of people be like, I'm afraid someone's going to find it. But at the same time, I'm like, screw that. Like if someone's going to find it, that's their bad. And whatever they read in there is up, like sucks to them because that's like, an invasion of privacy, period. Yeah. Like I used to write in the beginning of all my journals when I was like 7, 8, 9, like if you find this, that's your problem. Sucks to suck. I'm writing what I'm writing. Like if you see something you don't like, sorry, but you're not supposed to be in here.
yeah. This is not your property.
But also with the criticism thing, I think when people give you criticism, I think first things first is look at who's giving it to you and why. Because I'd say 95% of the time, it's a projection of their own
just gonna say
issues.
Yeah.
95% of the time.
Yeah.
And once you take out the taking things personally out of the equation, it makes things way easier. And I'd say that 5% when people mean what they're saying, or like say you've heard the same thing twice, chances are maybe you should take a look at yourself.
Right.
Like
if it's a reoccurring theme.
And that's okay. Like if you're able to look at yourself and make an adjustment about yourself or your personality, that is exactly what you were saying earlier. That's going to put you ahead of so many people and your success is going to be so much closer.
Totally.
And like I said in the beginning, I think that's the hottest, most attractive trait that someone can have is
for sure.
Having grit, determination, perseverance,
self-awareness.
Yeah. That is like, whoo.
So work on that this year.
Oh my gosh. If you find somebody with that,
oh my God,
they can look like whatever they want to look like.
Oh my God.
They're objectively hot.
You have a toe growing out of your forehead.
Hot.
Towhead. We love that.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I mean, thanks for the advice.
Yeah.
I'm honestly like, I'm going to put all this into play for next year.
And I don't know anything.
You do. It's, you know, it's all experience. Like it's all conversation. It's all perspective.
Yeah, that is one thing. And I don't know. It's cool hearing all my favorite comedians and different artists. And when they talk about like their failures, you know, I'm sure you can relate to this. That's when you see the most growth and also they're the most relatable.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, if you can learn from someone else's failure and learn from your own failure, you're just going to be in a better spot.
And try to develop a little bit of that grit. Like it'll get you through those like rough patches for sure. If you can just have that like perspective that this is only going to help you grow and become a better person and grittier person ultimately.
What would you say are good ways to develop grit? If like this is your first time encountering this?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like first and foremost, that took me a long time personally to sort of work through. I took everything so personally and really internalized it. Like it was directly to me. And I think understanding the, like you just said, that 95% of the time it is projection. But honestly, like the other side to that too is that you know, if you're hearing something over and over, like there's probably some truth in that. And none of us are perfect in any way, shape, or form. We are all continuing to like grow. I know that's the most basic thing ever, but it's true. There's validity in that. And so like if you can take those little criticisms and be like, you know what, like that is something I can work on. Like, okay, and how do I do that? Like, it doesn't have to be this whole big grandiose like shift in your identity and who you are, but like trying to take those little pieces and be like, yeah, I could do that better. Like I, you know, I think also I went through this sort of period in my 20s where you know, I wasn't the most responsive and I wasn't the best version of a friend I could be to a lot of my friends and a lot of my long-term friends. And there was definitely this point of shifting. And I, you know, I remember someone saying that to me. They're like, you don't have to call me every day. Like I was really bad with communication. And that was a point of criticism for me. And I was like, oh, you know, like, and I knew deep down, like they were right. And it was sort of this like gnawing thing. And I took that opportunity and I was like, you know what? Like, yeah, okay, I don't have to like call them every day, but like once a week. And then it sort of developed into this like habit where I worked on it and it became better and better and better. And so it's just like those small incremental changes can create big systematic change in your life. And I would say the same thing with like, you know, that's the long-term grit behind something. It doesn't have to be today or tomorrow. It just has to be a long-term like passion and perseverance and growth mindset. And it's a marathon, man. It's not a sprint. Like you don't have to get anywhere tomorrow. You don't have to get anywhere in 2 months. Like I said, it's just like, you just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. And I also think, that being said, when there's something that does go wrong, pushing it under the rug is not the way to go.
No.
Like, because
no.
I've had friend groups and friend parties and friend parties. But I've been to a party where like, you know, one of our friends ate too many mushrooms, and I too have been in that scenario.
Oh, we've all been there.
Where you act out of character.
Right.
And you do something like for example, I'll tell this story super fast, but there was a guy at one of our friends' weddings who, you know, was just lurking around the girls a bit here and there. And I got a little complaint from one friend that was like, he's being creepy to me. And then I got a complaint from another friend that was like, he's being super creepy to me.
And then I was like, he's being really creepy.
And so I'm just watching this guy all weekend.
Yeah.
And this guy popped out of the woodworks when all the girls were doing their makeup. And I was like, wow, look at how beautiful all these girls are.
In the mirror, just lined up, just gorgeous,
like princesses. And I'm just like, ah. And this guy pops out. And I go, can you just not? And it was like I had said it in my head, but I hadn't. It was out loud. And it was just like, wow, I really said that. And
brutally honest.
Yeah. And instead of just like moving on and pretending that didn't happen, I went up to him later and I was like, hey, I'm really sorry about that, because he doesn't know me. Yeah. Like for him, I'm some random girl that just was like, can you just not? And so I was like, hey, I'm really sorry for doing that. I'm sorry if I embarrassed you. That was not cool of me. I had a few mushrooms and I had no filter on that. And like, you know, I think taking ownership of something is so important, because
it is.
Like I said, the friend parties where like someone was like, I'm having an episode. And then the next morning, if you act like it didn't happen, that now is a part of your character and your personality. And people are like, they just do that sometimes. But if you're like, hey, sorry about last night, people are like, oh, it happens to all of us.
Yeah, you're like, no worries, man. So it's totally fine.
But taking
owning up to shit.
Yeah, that's so major.
Own up to it.
You gotta own it.
You get so much, like, people will respect you so much for owning up to your shit.
And isn't that grit, right? Being like,
fuck yeah,
I fucked up. Sorry.
And being like, yeah, like, I think you can look at it in so many ways, and that's why I love this like word, because it just means there's so much to it. There's so many layers to it, and just like this overall encompassing like personality, you know, trait and like characteristic that I think is such a good indicator of long-term like success in life, in partnerships, in friendships, in career, and like give it a try.
Yep. Try to
See
work it
how
in
it works out for yourself
every day.
every day. One little step.
Mm-hmm.
Until next week.
Until next week.
Until next week.
Thank you.
We'll be grittier than ever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks.
Hey, thanks.
This episode was produced by Tastemakers Media.